You've been lied to since childhood. They told you discipline was about trying harder, as if effort alone could save you. Wake up early, make a to-do list, push through. That's what you were taught. But what if I told you, that's just noise? The truth is far more brutal. Discipline has nothing to do with motivation. It is not a morning routine or a productivity hack. Discipline is a war, an invisible, psychological war. And in this war, you are either the commander of your mind or the prisoner of your own chaos. Most people today are not undisciplined because they lack effort. They are undisciplined because they lack strategy. They scroll endlessly, start 100 things and finish none, give in to distractions dressed as obligations. Their lives resemble fallen kingdoms, ruled not by wisdom, but by craving. And here's the part no one dares to say. You don't need more motivation. You need Machiavelli. Because Machiavelli understood something that modern self-help will never teach you. The world doesn't reward your dreams, your good intentions, or your morning affirmations. It rewards control. It rewards the person who can govern themselves, even when everything around them is on fire. To Machiavelli, discipline wasn't a virtue. It was a weapon. The weak man lives on hope. The disciplined man carves his path through reality. Whether you are the ruler of a nation or the ruler of your bedroom, the truth is the same. If you do not govern yourself, someone else will. And that's the cruelest part. The moment you stop leading yourself, the world steps in and takes over. So if you're looking for something comfortable, this video isn't for you. But if you're ready to stop being ruled by your impulses and start ruling your own life with precision, clarity, and inner dominance, then keep watching. Because this is Psychology Insights, and in the next 25 minutes, you're going to learn how to master discipline, not just for a day, but forever. There is a reason why most people fail to change, no matter how many motivational videos they watch or how many planners they buy. It's because they think discipline is an emotional event, something that strikes like lightning, suddenly and spectacularly, igniting a new version of themselves overnight. But Machiavelli, one of the most brutally honest minds in history, knew better. He saw discipline not as a fleeting feeling, but as a fortress. Cold, calculated, strategic, and absolutely essential to survival. In fact, if you want to understand power, real, lasting, psychological power, you must begin here. Because discipline is not just the root of success, it's the only thing standing between you and the forces constantly trying to dominate you from the outside and from within. As Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Discipline, in the Machiavellian sense, is the very act of making the unconscious conscious, of building an inner command center so strong that even fate bows to your preparation. True discipline requires constant vigilance, strategic planning, and relentless self-control. It's not something you have, it's something you build, one decision at a time. It's the ability to tell your impulses, not today. It's the awareness that every moment of distraction, every excuse you tolerate, every small surrender to comfort, is a chisel hacking away at the foundation of your inner structure. That's why Machiavelli didn't treat discipline as a moral virtue. He treated it as a state secret, a foundation so crucial to power that to neglect it was to invite collapse. If you can apply even a fraction of what you'll hear today, it won't just change how you work, it will change who you are. Because this isn't about tips or tricks. This is about turning your mind into a battlefield and winning. Machiavelli never wrote to inspire the masses or flatter the weak. He wrote to prepare warriors of the mind, people who understood that life is not fair, comfort is not guaranteed, and the world does not bend to wishes. When he spoke of discipline, he stripped it of sentiment. For him, discipline was not a feeling, it was a system. Not something you lean on when you feel strong, but something that makes you strong when you feel like falling apart. He saw that without structure, without a method for governing yourself, Even the most intelligent man becomes a fool at the mercy of his environment. And in today's world, where attention is hijacked, emotions are manipulated, and distraction is a trillion-dollar industry, that warning is more urgent than ever. In The Prince, Machiavelli wrote, "For just as the good order of the militias is the origin of good order in the states, discipline is what enables a city or an army to withstand adversities." This was not metaphor. It was blueprint, because he knew no kingdom can survive with a chaotic army, and no life can thrive with a chaotic mind. The outer world reflects the inner. Your habits are your strategy. Your focus is your weapon. Your ability to delay gratification is not just self-help advice. It's political warfare against the internal forces of self-sabotage. And those who fail to recognize this will forever be ruled by their urges, always reacting, never commanding. Machiavelli saw what most people still refuse to face. Discipline is not just for moments of crisis. It is permanent armor, a tool for enduring both silence and storms. It is what keeps a ruler steady when fear whispers lies, when anger demands vengeance, when pride begs for applause. Without discipline, the greatest among us fall not from enemy arrows, but from within, from emotional cracks that widen when we are too lazy, too arrogant, or too blind to seal them. An undisciplined man may look powerful on the surface, but underneath, his foundation is already rotting. And so the message is simple, but brutal. If you don't lead yourself, something else will. A vice, a habit, a fear, a person, a system. There is no such thing as a neutral mind. Life, like a throne, is never vacant. If you do not occupy it with strategy, awareness, and command, you will be governed by something far less noble. In today's world, chaos is constant. That means discipline must be too. The question is, will you treat it like a temporary effort, or will you build it into your bones? And in the next 25 minutes, we're not just going to talk about discipline. We're going to train for it, as if your freedom depended on it. Because it does. There's a silent war happening inside you every single day, and the vast majority never win it. Why? Because they act without calculation, move without preparation, and react without reflection. And as Machiavelli knew centuries ago, these are the surest paths to collapse. Discipline isn't something you turn on when life gets chaotic. It must be a permanent state of readiness, a mental and emotional fortress built brick by brick through deliberate, tireless effort. It is not occasional effort that protects a kingdom, but the constant maintenance of its walls. Just as a city left unguarded will eventually fall, a mind left undisciplined will betray its own desires. In a world that glorifies spontaneity and emotion, we forget what Carl Jung once warned. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. And awakening, in this context, is realizing that unless you govern yourself, someone or something else will. Machiavelli had no illusions about human nature. He saw our desires, our pride, and our fears not as signs of weakness, but as inevitable forces, dangerous only when left ungoverned. His brilliance lay in this. He understood that every human, not just rulers or generals, is constantly at war with themselves. To master this battle, he insisted, required relentless internal vigilance. Discipline wasn't a matter of moral pride or idealistic virtue. It was a non-negotiable condition of power. And here lies a painful truth most avoid. If you don't train your mind to follow your conscious commands, your instincts, emotions, and impulses will rule you. And to Machiavelli, that meant you were already politically dead, just waiting for the consequences to catch up. Now, consider this not as metaphor, but as strategic fact. The human spirit is a battlefield. Your thoughts are soldiers. Your emotions are terrain. Your fears are enemy agents, waiting for a gap in your defenses. In this war, there is no neutrality. You're either commanding the army, or you're being overrun by it. Think of what happens when an army marches to war without strategy, without training, without discipline. It doesn't matter how brave they are already lost. That's not a battle. That's a massacre. The same happens in your mind. No amount of passion, desire, or motivation can save you if you panic under pressure, collapse under fatigue, or surrender to impulse when the stakes are highest. Machiavelli understood this better than any modern motivational speaker. He saw undisciplined people the way he saw mercenary armies: unreliable, weak, doomed to scatter at the first sign of discomfort. In his Discourses on Livy, he wrote, "The orders of a wise captain are not obeyed by undisciplined soldiers. This isn't just about war. It's a psychological principle. Your conscious mind, your higher reasoning, is the captain. But if your inner world is chaotic, if your emotional responses and mental habits haven't been trained to obey, then even the most brilliant plan you have will be betrayed by the very army meant to carry it out. You will say one thing and do another. Set goals, only to sabotage them. Speak of ambition, but act in avoidance. This is not weakness. This is lack of internal training." And so Machiavelli's vision of discipline becomes something far deeper than self-control. It becomes the very architecture of your life. Just as a small, disciplined army can overcome a massive, scattered force, so too can a single well-trained thought conquer a storm of distractions. Victory is never about how many ideas you have, how many goals you write down, or how much motivation you feel. It is about how tightly your inner army follows your command. That's real power. Not noise. Not dreams. Control. So, as you listen to the next part of this video, remember, this is not about inspiration, it's about formation. If you want freedom, strategy must replace hope, order must replace chaos, and discipline, real, structured, internal discipline, must become your daily weapon. Not just in moments of crisis, but in the silence where your future is decided. And this is how you master discipline forever, not by trying harder, but by commanding better. Now, ask yourself, with ruthless honesty, how many times have you failed? Not because you lacked intelligence, talent, or even opportunity, but because you simply lost control of your own inner world. How many times have you promised yourself change, only to watch those promises dissolve the moment fatigue whispered excuses or doubt knocked at the door? Like a foolish general who loses the battle before even drawing his sword, you surrender your life's potential the very moment you stop commanding your mind. True military discipline, as Machiavelli understood it, has nothing to do with how you feel. It is rising each day with unwavering determination, showing up when motivation is absent, following strategy over impulse, and pushing forward when the body resists and the soul wavers. Because in the brutal math of life, victory belongs to those who do not flinch in the face of difficulty, to those who do not pause when the path gets hard, but instead become harder than the path itself. Machiavelli saw clearly that battles are not won by brute force alone, but by meticulous structure, preparation, and unwavering internal command. This is not just military wisdom, it is psychological truth. As Viktor Frankl once said, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And this, in the modern world, is more relevant than ever. We live in a time where feelings are glorified, where discomfort is pathologized, and where discipline is seen as outdated. Yet it is exactly this cultural negligence that leaves so many people defeated, overwhelmed, and blaming everything but themselves. But now you know better. If you truly want to master your life, you must become the general of your own inner army. You must train your thoughts, as Machiavelli trained his soldiers, with precision, without mercy, and without leaving any room for excuses. Because in the battlefield of existence, indiscipline is not just weakness, it is a slow death sentence. If discipline is your armor, then virtue is the steel it's forged from. It is the inner power that not only withstands fate, but bends it, the kind of internal strength that does not wait on fate, but challenges it head-on. For Machiavelli, fate, or fortuna, is not a wise judge, nor a force of justice. It is a raging flood, blind, destructive, and indifferent to your dreams. In The Prince, he writes, "Fortune is like one of those impetuous rivers that, when they become enraged, flood the fields, topple trees and buildings. But although they are thus furious, this does not prevent men, in times of calm, from taking precautions with dikes and barriers." This metaphor is not poetic, it is a warning. The world is volatile. Storms will come, and if you wait until you're drowning to build mental discipline, it will already be too late. Those who depend on luck are merely waiting to be swept away. But those who build inner fortresses, who cultivate discipline, like the patient construction of a dam, are the ones who survive the storm and reshape its aftermath. Virtue is not moral virtue. It is adaptive, resilient power. It is the ability to remain unshaken when others collapse, to respond with calculation while others react with chaos. It is the strength to act, to lead, to create, not because the conditions are perfect, but because you've trained for when they're not. Machiavelli's greatest men did not worship fortune. They bent it, used it, and often conquered it. They did not wait for strength to be gifted. They built it, long before it was required. And so must you. Because while others sleep, distracted by comfort, and lulled by the fantasy that life will sort itself out, the disciplined are preparing, quietly, relentlessly, for the inevitable flood. And when it comes, they will not panic. They will rise. Now take a hard, unfiltered look at your life. Not the version you post online, not the one you convince others of, but the raw, silent version you face when no one else is watching. How many times have you waited for the right moment, hoping life would somehow rearrange itself in your favor? How many times have you postponed action, telling yourself you were just waiting for things to calm down, for the timing to align, for the stars to finally cooperate? The brutal truth is that most people are not defeated by failure, they are defeated by hesitation. And while modern culture teaches you to be patient with yourself, Machiavelli would call that what it truly is: self-deception. In his worldview, fortune, or luck, is a raging force, unpredictable and violent, but not invincible. He warned us, those who rely on luck are setting themselves up for destruction. Only those who build virtue, inner strength, resilience, strategic control, can bend fortune to their will. And the question now is no longer philosophical, it's personal. How do you build virtue? How do you stop drifting through life, manipulated by emotions and distractions, and become the commander of your own destiny? That's what this next phase reveals. Because today, discipline has become a parody of itself, sold as a product, wrapped in motivational quotes, and reduced to morning habits and color-coded planners. People think they can conquer themselves with productivity apps and dopamine hacks, as if mastering your mind were just a matter of finding the right system. But Machiavelli, if he were alive today, would laugh at this illusion. He knew something we have forgotten. True discipline is not convenient. It is not smooth, nor aesthetic, nor Instagrammable. It is painful. It is raw. It is a form of daily psychological warfare, waged not against the world, but against everything weak, soft, and undisciplined inside of you. And you fail not because you lack tools, but because you've been conditioned to believe there's an easier way. You've been sold the lie that there's a shortcut, that if you can just find the right habit stack, the perfect environment, the magic playlist, life will fall into place. But real discipline isn't born from optimization. It is born from confrontation. It is forged in those moments when your body aches for rest, when your mind begs you to delay, when everything inside you screams later, and you act anyway. That's the kind of structure Machiavelli revered. Discipline not as a feeling, but as a fortress, built not from motivation, but from cold, repeated, unwavering action. He taught that those who wait for the right time are already defeated. Because discipline isn't built in moments of urgency, it's built in silence, on the boring days, in the invisible hours, in the choices that no one applauds, but which define everything. And here's the part most people never want to admit. Today's culture treats discipline like therapy, something soft, flexible, full of self-praise and forgiveness. But Machiavellian discipline is military. It does not care about your mood. It does not negotiate. It imposes. And if you are still living your life waiting to feel ready, you are walking the path of the defeated, like cattle quietly waiting for someone else to decide their future. If you want the kind of discipline that builds empires, both internal and external, you must choose a harder road. You must accept that pain is not a side effect. It is the price. You must begin to treat your mind as a battlefield, and every weakness as an enemy to eliminate, not embrace. And if you've truly grasped the gravity of what's been said so far, then you're ready for what comes next. The step-by-step construction of a brutal, unshakable daily system based on Machiavelli's principles. Not motivational fluff, but real, strategic formation. Because knowing the value of discipline means nothing if you don't structure your life in a way that makes failure impossible. Machiavelli taught that a wise leader prepares before the storm. He builds defenses in times of peace. You must do the same with your mind. If you start each day by asking how you feel, you've already surrendered the throne. Your victory, or your defeat, begins in the earliest hours of the morning, long before the world even realizes you're in the fight. Let me ask you something that most people never dare to confront. What if the reason your life hasn't changed isn't because you're unlucky, unskilled, or uninspired, but because you lack the internal structure to command yourself like a general commands an army? As Carl Jung once said, you are what you do, not what you say you'll do. In the world of discipline, your identity is not defined by your intentions. It is defined by your execution. And execution, as Machiavelli knew, requires more than motivation. It demands method, brutal, daily, uncompromising method. If you truly want to build the kind of discipline that can't be shaken by emotion or fatigue, then this is your blueprint. Step 1 is constant vigilance, daily self-observation. Every single day, without exception, you must become the commander of your own mind, inspecting your behavior with the same scrutiny a general applies before sending troops to war. You ask yourself, where are my defenses weak? Where are my emotions taking control? Because every lazy impulse you allow, every small excuse you justify, is not just a harmless mistake. It's a breach in your fortress. Discipline decays quietly. One missed task, one snoozed alarm, one "I'll do it tomorrow" becomes the crack through which failure slips in. Visualize your mind as a fortress. Every act of avoidance is like pulling a stone from your own wall. Every moment of procrastination is a catapult aimed inward. Constant vigilance doesn't mean stress. It means responsibility. It means fixing the small cracks before they collapse into disasters. It means punishing yourself with truth, not excuses, when you detect signs of weakness. The second principle is clear strategy, rigid routines that eliminate decision-making altogether. You need to understand something most people never do. Your brain, if left unchecked, will always default to the easiest option. That's not a character flaw, it's biology. Decision fatigue is real. Every choice you make throughout the day drains your willpower. That's why discipline doesn't begin with heroic effort. It begins with strategic simplicity. If you wake up every morning deciding whether or not to train, or whether today feels like a work day, your brain will betray you. But if your day is structured so tightly that you no longer ask if, only when, you create what Machiavelli would call tactical command. Routines are not cages, they are shields. When you commit to fixed wake-up times, set training blocks, lock in focused work sessions like military orders, you eliminate the need for negotiation. Training doesn't happen when you feel ready. It happens because it's non-negotiable. This is how soldiers operate. This is how discipline becomes identity. Because the moment something becomes who you are, not what you try to do, resistance loses power. Now comes the third, most feared piece of the method: relentless reinforcement. In the real world, actions have consequences, and so must yours. If you miss your commitment, there must be a price. A real, painful, visible price. Why? Because your mind must learn that failure isn't a shrug, it's a signal that demands response. Think about a soldier on the field. He doesn't skip training because he's tired. He doesn't ask if he's in the mood. He obeys because there's a chain of command, and failure brings punishment, shame, demotion, even exile. Your internal world must mirror this structure. Practical reinforcement matters. Make your goals public. Set a consequence that stings. Donate money to a cause you hate if you break your word. Tell your peers when you've failed. Feel the discomfort. And let that discomfort rewire your standards. Because real discipline is not about gold stars and dopamine hits. It's about avoiding collapse. You are not training yourself to feel good. You are training yourself to become unbreakable. And so here is the truth that separates the few who lead from the many who follow. Discipline is not a trend. It's not an app. It's not a burst of motivation or a list of hacks. Discipline is self-imposed control before life imposes chaos. It is building chains that hold you to your standard before life throws shackles that hold you to your failure. It is not glamorous. It is not comfortable, but it is necessary. You wake up each day and, without apology, without drama, you march toward your goal like a commander who understands that softness is betrayal. Because if you don't train yourself to obey your own commands, life will command you, with consequences far harsher than your internal discipline would ever be. And so, if you're still waiting to feel ready, understand this: the war has already begun. You either command yourself now, or be conquered by your own excuses forever. Now that you've seen the truth, the real question is no longer what to do. It's whether you'll actually do it. This video wasn't just about understanding discipline. It was about reclaiming command over your life. We exposed the myths, revealed the structure, and gave you the mindset Machiavelli himself would demand. You now know. Discipline is not a temporary push. It's a permanent structure. Your mind is your kingdom, and only you can decide whether you rule it or are ruled by it. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, don't just walk away, take action. In the comments, write, "I choose to be my own prince." Let it be your declaration, not to me, but to yourself. And while you're here, I want to hear from you. Which part of this hit hardest? Drop your thoughts below, and let's open a real conversation. This is just the beginning. On this channel, Psychology Insights, we don't chase motivation. We build mental empires. So if you're ready to keep forging that unshakable discipline, make sure to subscribe and watch the next video in this series. Every step forward is another strike against weakness. And remember, the first victory is always over yourself.